If you've got any kind of credit card debt that you can't afford to pay off completely every single month, then you'll know you're going to be getting charged interest every single month. Any money that's left on there, you're going to get charged a penalty for that. You're going to have to pay more for the privilege of using that credit card. However, the reason you're probably watching this video is there is a way to move that money you owe, that balance, to a different credit card where no interest is charged. This is a 0% balance transfer credit card. Now, these not only can save you a huge amount of money, they can also help you pay off that debt, clear that debt much faster than if you left it where it was. So that's what I'm going to do in today's video. I'm going to take you through just exactly how 0% balance transfer credit cards work, show you how much money you could save, and also give you a few tips and tricks to make sure that whether you're applying for one or when you're using one, that you are getting the most out of it. Hi, I'm Andy Webb from BeCleverWithYourCash.com. Welcome to my channel. This is the place to be if you want to make the most of your money, whether that's spending it, saving it, making it, or better managing it. And I do 2 or 3 videos every single week exactly on those things. So if you don't want to miss any of those, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that little notification bell right next to it so you will get told whenever I release a new video. And it's particularly important when we come to this video and 0% balance transfer cards, because although I'm going to take you through how they work, the actual deals, the actual promotions which are available to you can change on a very, very regular basis. So what I do at the start of every single month, I do a roundup of the best credit cards out there. So not just balance transfer credit cards, but purchase credit cards, cashback credit cards, travel credit cards, credit building credit cards, right? That's where you want to be. So watch this video and then look out for those updates every month. So when you do come to apply for one of these cards or any other credit card, you've got a much better chance of knowing what the best deal is out there. Right, so how does a balance transfer credit card work? And although primarily I'm talking about 0% balance transfer credit cards, there are some where you can move your balance over to a cheaper rate. It might not be 0%, but essentially they work in the same way. Essentially what you're doing is you are applying for a new credit card, and it has to be one that is specialized for balance transfers. It allows you to move the amount you owe on one credit card, or maybe 2 or 3 credit cards. You can sometimes move multiple debts over, move them to the new card. Essentially, if you are accepted for this new credit card, the provider, the credit card company that's giving you that, is saying to your old ones, we'll clear that debt, we'll wipe that out. And instead you owe them that money. Now, whereas before you might have been paying 19, 20, 25%, maybe higher, depending on what card you had, on this balance transfer credit card, you'll be given a new consolidated interest rate. And the whole idea for most people, the best way to do this is to go for a 0% one, and that 0% rate means you will not get charged interest on that debt. Now, as I'll get into it in a minute, there are time limits often associated with that 0% period. It's not forever. It could be for a year, year and a half, 2 years, maybe even 2.5 years, okay? And there's not many longer than that right now. But you move that money over, and then you've got that amount of time where no interest is added. So how much money could that save? Well, it depends on a few different factors. It depends how much money you owe, depends what interest rate you are paying, depends how long you get the 0% period for, it depends how much money you're paying back every single month. So really, all those different factors, I can't tell you exactly how much you'll save, but I've got a couple of examples here that I'll give you an indication of just how important these can be in helping you save some money and help you really reduce that debt that you owe. So let's say you owe 2.5 grand. You're paying 18.9% on that credit card, and you're making a fixed payment every single month of £100. Okay. Now, if you've got a higher interest rate on your debt, or you're not paying a fixed amount, maybe it's the minimum amount which gradually decreases, then the savings I'm about to show you will be even higher. But let's say that's your debt, 2.5 grand, 18.9%, and you're paying £100 every single month. Now that would take you 32 months to completely clear that debt, and it would cost you £631 in interest. £631, a lot of money, and that's a long time, 32 months. More than 2.5 years. Now, if you were able to move that debt to a 0% card, and let's say you kept paying that £100 every single month, if that 0% period lasted at least 25 months, you would clear that debt in that time. 0 interest will be added over those 25 months, £100 every single month, absolutely all gone. You would save yourself £631 in interest. Now, depending what card you have, you might have to pay a transfer fee. Typically, you're looking at around 3%, sometimes a bit more, often a little bit less, but let's say it's 3% of the amount you move over with this card. Well, that would be 75 quid. So yes, you've got to pay 75 quid, but that's compared to paying 600 odd pounds in interest. So actually the amount of money you'd save with this particular example is about 556 pounds. Huge amount of money you'd save, plus that debt would be paid off, what was it, 25 months rather than 32 months, so 7 months early. That's win-win. Let's look at another example for a smaller debt. Let's say you owe £1,000. Again, let's say it's 18.9% that you're being charged. And let's say you're making a smaller regular payment of 50 quid every single month. It's going to take you 2 years to clear that debt, and it will cost you close to £200. It'll be about 190 quid in interest that you would pay over the duration of clearing that debt. Now, if you move that to a 0% balance transfer credit card, and if we say you're sticking that £50 a month, you'll be looking for something that's at least 20 months. If you get 20 months at 0%, that £50 will clear that £1,000 with no interest being added. And okay, let's assume you've got to pay a fee. Let's assume it's 3%, again, could be less. But let's say that's 3% of £1,000, £30. Take that off the amount of money you would have paid. Your saving is 160 quid. Still a fantastic saving. And that's just a couple of random examples that I cooked up. You know, you can find these calculators online where you can put in exactly how much money you owe, exactly what you're paying, and exactly have a look at those options, see how much money you personally could save if you transfer it over. So it's well worth it. Now, what you should be doing, as I explained that example, is you should be taking every opportunity to clear that debt over that 0% time. I know a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll get a 0% card and they'll just make the minimum repayment every single month, because you have to do that. If you don't pay the minimum every single month, you lose the 0% promotional period. But then when it gets to that 18 months, 20 months, 25 months, whatever it is, they then switch it again. They transfer the balance to another card and they keep doing this. You almost never pay off that debt. And this is really risky, because what happens if you can't get a new deal? Now this thing, you know, these market changes all the time. Cards disappear, they can be harder to get. Over the last year, we've seen that harder for people to get the 0% balance transfer credit cards. If you can't transfer over, you're all of a sudden left with a big debt at potentially a higher interest rate than you had when you first made that initial transfer. So absolutely, I think the golden rule, the number one rule, if you have a 0% balance transfer credit card that you've moved money over to, is to work out how much you can afford to pay every single month to clear it by the time it ends. Now, you might not be able to do it in total. You might still be a little bit shy. You might need £60 a month to completely clear it, and you can only afford 50 quid. You might need, you get the idea. Well, that's still better to have cleared however many payments of 50 and have a small amount left, because you're still going to be saving, although you'll have to pay interest on the balance that's left if you can't transfer it again. It's still going to be a lot less than you would have paid if you left the whole amount there and had to pay interest on it. So that's the golden rule number one. Try and clear it in that 0% period. Now, when you're applying for those cards, you want to you take that into account. So you look at the debt that you've got, you work out how much you can afford to pay every single month, and you kind of try and work out how many months you would require to clear that debt. And that can kind of lead you to kind of go for whether you want to go for one of the longer cards, or whether actually you could do with something that's a little bit shorter. And there's a good reason for that, because I mentioned that fee, that transfer fee that comes into play when you move the money over. If you go, and this is right now, again, these deals come and go, and I will update them every single month, the best offers out there. But for example, right now, you can get an 18-month balance transfer at 0% with zero fee. So if you think you could clear that debt in a year and a half, then that's going to be even cheaper than going for a longer 0% period that comes with a transfer fee. Now, with any of these cards that you go for, obviously the length of the deal is really important. That's really a key thing for you, decide which one to go for. But more important than that probably is how likely you are to get a card. So as I say, whenever I talk about credit cards, you want to do an eligibility check beforehand. This is basically where often you can do it direct with the credit card's own websites, but I would go to a comparison site. The one that I generally think is the best one for this is Money Saving Experts Credit Club. You go in there and it will give you, put your details in, and it performs what's called a soft check against your credit report. So it doesn't appear on your credit file. There's no sort of a record that you've actually had a sort of a look at this stuff. but it will give you an indication for all the cards that they show. And it won't be every single card, but all the cards that are listed. And it will give you an idea, like maybe it's like you've got a 9 out of 10 chance of getting this card. Maybe you only got a 5 out of 10 chance of getting this one. Maybe a 2 out of 10 chance of getting this card. Well, you want to weigh up then the difference between the card that offers you a much, much higher chance of getting accepted. Maybe even you could be pre-approved, 10 out of 10, which would be amazing. Versus one which might cost you a little bit less money in terms of that transfer fee, or maybe give you a little bit more time, but you've got you haven't got such a good chance of getting accepted. So weigh those things up. But that's the other thing, when you're applying for that card, work that stuff all out in advance. There's something else to note when you're applying for the card as well. When you are looking at the amount of months you might be offered, if it says up to 25 months, 27 months, whatever it might be, that means you might not get the full amount of time. You might be offered something a little bit shorter. Now, the reason they can get away with this is because they have to give the advertised rate to at least 51% of applicants. They might give it to a lot more people. They might give it to almost everyone, that full amount. But it means there could be up to 49% of people who are successfully accepted onto that card get a shorter period of time. So if you absolutely know you 100% need to have a set amount of time, and if it is, they do give you a shorter amount of time, messes things up, well then look for ones that sort of guarantee how much you'll get. There are cards that you will get this amount, and if they don't say up to, that means you will get this amount of time, this length of time. So that's something really important to consider as well. Another factor to consider when you're applying is you don't know before you get the card the size of your credit limit, and that credit limit basically dictates how much debt can be transferred over. Now, when I did this with some families for Shop Smart Save Money on Channel 5, we went through the process, we did the eligibility checker, we came through, pre-approved for a card, they got it, and they needed to transfer 2.5 grand. The credit limit was 2.5 grand. So it fitted them perfectly. They were able to move that money over, no problem. There's obviously a chance that if you owe, let's say, just stick with 2.5 grand, but they only offer you 2 grand, well, there's £500 that won't move over. And you don't want to then apply for another balance transfer credit card straight away. You want to give it a bit of time. So you're still going to have potentially some money going, being charged interest on. So another thing to just, bear that, have that in the back of your mind when you're making this application. You might not be able to move all your money over. A few more important things to talk about when you are looking at balance transfer credit cards. You've often got a short amount of time, could be 2 months, maybe 3 months, when you apply for that card for you to transfer that balance over. If you leave it too long and it goes past that deadline, you won't be able to move the cash over. So make sure you know exactly when that transfer deadline is. And depending on the type of card that you've got, the type of one you've applied for, it's generally not a good idea to spend on these cards again, because you're just creating more debt. If you think you're going to have to spend money on credit cards, look for a different card. And again, space out those applications a little bit. Leave it a little bit of time before you go for your next card once you've got your balance transfer. It might be that you've applied for a card that is both a 0% purchase card and a 0% balance transfer credit card. And these do exist. There aren't a huge number of them, but they do exist. If that's something that you think you might need, then maybe seek those cards out. Generally, when you get this though, that 0% purchase period is often shorter than the balance transfer period, or the balance transfer period you get on these cards is shorter than the ones you can get elsewhere. So again, weigh up these things. And ultimately though, it's best not to spend on these cards if you can avoid it, because if they're not a 0% card, then the interest that you are charging them is going to be very expensive as well. And I guess the final point to say on 0% balance transfer credit cards, if you think that by getting one, and if you're able to get one, you're moving the money over, you're just delaying things, and you can't see any way that you're going to be able to clear that debt in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be, then this might not be the answer for you. If there's other problems you've got, other debts elsewhere, if you're behind on your bills and things like that, this could be a sign that you need to kind of seek some proper free and impartial support. There are places like Citizens Advice, Step Change. Go for these free charities, the ones that won't charge you any money, to help you look at your debts and find your way out. Much, much better doing that than getting stung later on, just postponing the inevitable. But hopefully that's not your situation. Hopefully you've just got some debt that you know you can clear if you can just stop those interest payments sort of piling up on top. Now, if you found this useful, please do hit that like button below. I know everyone asks this on YouTube, but it really does make a difference for the algorithm. It helps other people find these videos, and hopefully, as a result of this one, they too will save themselves a ton of cash by clearing that debt, much faster and with a lot less interest on top. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time. And here are a couple more videos you might find interesting.